This is the ArcGIS Maps for Power BI introduction. I'm Scott, and this is DJ. We've also got our friend Sanjeev from Microsoft here. So we're going to be talking over the next hour about what this thing is, this Maps for Power BI thing. We're going to be, man, I am getting a lot of boom out of this. Move it away a little bit. So we're going to be giving you an overview of what ArcGIS Maps for Power BI is. We're going to talk a little bit about this Esri and Microsoft partnership because this thing was a result of a good partnership between Esri and Microsoft. We have worked together on this, both Esri development teams, the Microsoft Power BI team. We've worked hand in hand to make this thing reality and make it happen. Then we'll get into some of the features of Maps for Power BI. We'll be talking about how you can start by visualizing your Power BI data on a map. Once you've got your Power BI data on a map, you can use ArcGIS information and reference layers to add more context to that Power BI information. You can also find nearby locations and do a little bit of analysis using our tool called Drive Times. So we'll show you how to do that, all along the way giving demos of all of this stuff. At the end, we'll go through a licensing overview because some things have changed since last year, if you were with us last year. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming with the product. And if we have some time left over, which I hope to have maybe 5 to 10 minutes left over, we'll do some questions at the end. So let's go ahead and jump in. So what is ArcGIS Maps for Power BI? We should start really by talking about what is Power BI. How many people use Power BI today in your job? How many people know what Power BI is? And let's flip it. How many people don't know what Power BI is? Handful. So for those of you who don't know what Power BI is, it's a business intelligence tool created by Microsoft. And so it's a really darn good business intelligence tool. So it allows you to connect to data sources throughout your organization. So whether those are in Excel files or SQL Server databases or Hadoop clusters, you can connect to all of those things, bring them into a data model, and then analyze them. Put them on a report or a dashboard, use widgets to visualize your information coming from that model, and gain new insights into the data that you're looking at. So that's Power BI, kind of in a nutshell. And so now that that kind of foundation has been laid, I want to talk a little bit about ArcGIS Maps for Power BI. And so ArcGIS Maps for Power BI, as I mentioned, was a collaborative effort between Esri and Microsoft. We got together a couple years ago and decided that we needed to provide better maps to BI users. Microsoft saw that Esri was the leader in spatial, and so we made sense to work with them. From our perspective, Power BI was one of the up-and-coming and best BI tools out there, so it made sense for us to work with Microsoft, and so we've joined forces to provide better maps to BI users. It allows those BI users, those users who are not necessarily GIS experts, they're people within organizations that might have the role of like BI analyst or data scientist, help those people answer location-based questions because there haven't been a lot of really good tools to answer spatial questions in the BI space. So that's what ArcGIS Maps for Power BI was built to do. And then once you kind of do those things, you can also, as I mentioned earlier, add context using Esri demographics and layers coming from ArcGIS. So actually being able to bring in content from either your ArcGIS organization or content that Esri has curated and provided through a couple of different methods that we'll talk through later in this session. So that's kind of the high-level thing. If you remember 3 things about this session, remember these 3 things. And at this point, I want to go ahead and jump in and give you a look at Maps for Power BI. So DJ, why don't you give us a look?
All right, let's get started. Let's see, you switched me over yet?
What are you on?
Should be on 3.
Okay. There we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. So let's see. You should be seeing a report here. Basically what you're looking at is a dashboard for a company that does tire sales. So you've got their distribution centers and the inventory they have at each center, as well as the stores in Southern California and the inventory at each of those stores. And along the bottom are gauges that break down based on tire type. So we all know about those awesome standard tires that we all love to drive on. And because in Power BI you can set up tabular joins, this allows you to do things like pull in a bunch of different data sets and have them interact, and you can very quickly view inventory levels at the stores associated with each distribution center. You can get a very quick overview of where you might be running low, where you might need to perhaps move some inventory. And it's a really great way to visualize your data and get a good feel for how your business is doing. Now, we can do a lot of the same thing here using our maps. So as you can see here, these two maps, what I've done is I've basically recreated those two bar maps or bar charts using a pair of maps. So here on the left, you have those distribution centers again, colored based on their names, and their sizes indicate the amount of inventory at each store. And then on the right, you have a map showing all of the store locations in Southern California, styled by the distribution center that's serving them, and the size represents the amount of inventory there. And so you're seeing a lot of the same information here with the added information of location. So you get a little more context, a little more understandable, and you go through here and it's interactive, so you can make these selections, and you're going to see your gauges update, your maps update. You can see how all these different stores are doing. You can also, because this is a map, you zoom in take a look and pan around and see, okay, you know what, we got a store here that maybe is running low on inventory. And we'll talk about a little later how you can use this tool to help determine where the best place is to pull inventory from if needed. Also, because this is a spatial tool and we've got this boundary on the back, we can also perform spatial selections in Power BI. So I can come in here and say, okay, I want to select everything within this boundary. It'll do that, and you'll see these gauges along the bottom will update. And so this allows you to perform some really powerful spatial analysis in Power BI, and this is something you can't really see in any of the other visuals. So it's some pretty cool tools here.
Very cool.
Pretty cool stuff. So thank you, Scott.
Okay. Moving along, we will jump back into the presentation. I think I am on 5. There we go. And so the next thing that we want to talk about, we want to spend a little bit of time talking about this Esri plus Microsoft equals better together story. So as I mentioned before, this has been a partnership. We've partnered on the Power BI project. We partner on a number of different projects together. We really do have this close partnership. And to explain a little bit more and talk a little bit more about that, I would like to welcome Sanjeev, a technical evangelist for Microsoft.
Hey folks, I'll just put it here because I like to use my hands. I can't speak until my hands are moving. So as Scott very aptly put, I'm called a technical evangelist, and it's a really fancy word for a person who gives, what is the right word, white glove red carpet service to Esri. So essentially at Microsoft, we work with partners, and Esri is one of our really, really important partners. And in fact, they have been with us for a very long time. And the relationship that Esri and Microsoft have built up over a very long time is bi-directional. It's not just one-sided. Like, so if we look at Power BI, Microsoft built Power BI a while ago as a BI tool for enterprises. And then what we realized was we didn't really have a very good spatial story in the Power BI map. So we came to Esri and said, hey, you guys are the topmost folks in this area. How about you come and help us out here? So usually Esri sells B2B. It's less business to consumer. So, but they decided to take a dip a toe and see if it actually made sense. And they tried, and they created a free Power BI visual. That thing still exists. You can use the base functionality for free. And that worked out really well. So they said, let's go all in, and let's see if we can put a slightly deeper integration. And that went, again, much, much better. They kept on improving, and just very recently, they actually gave us the ability to sell bulk. Previously, you could buy only at an individual level, and now you can buy bulk. So the partnership is growing actually quite well. That's one thing. So right now, it feels like Microsoft asked for something and Esri gave back. That's not how the relationship works. The relationship works only when it's bidirectional. So one place where Microsoft has actually benefited quite a lot and has taken input from Esri is a SQL Server. So Esri uses SQL Server very heavily for ArcGIS enterprise deployments. And they came to us and said, hey guys, we really like this product, but your spatial capabilities are a little bit lacking. So the SQL Server team and the Esri team, we actually sat together, and over years, whenever a new scenario comes up, we go and tweak the spatial capabilities, and it keeps on improving and improving. Just very recently, like I think about a month ago, we put in some new features. We just lit it up. Again, flowing back from Esri back to SQL team. This happens like on a not just once. This is all happening every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, we meet and keep on improving. The last thing I very quickly wanted to touch on was this thing called GeoAI VM. So virtual machines, if you have been in cloud, you know what a virtual machine is. It's just a machine sitting in the cloud. With Esri, we sat down and we put the ArcGIS Pro bits in a VM, along with a ton of other awesome tools that normally you would use, like Python, command line tools, Jupyter notebooks, if you want to do any Python notebooks there, all sort of other machine learning tools. So this is all pre-installed, and this is a great collaboration between Esri and Microsoft to make sure that you can have the tooling that you require right up front when you go to the cloud without having to do any extra work. So that's one more way in which we work together. So 3 things I just mentioned: Power BI, the SQL Server, and Esri, and the back and forth. Works great. Thanks, Scott.
Cool. Thank you, Sanjeev. So moving on a little bit, we've kind of heard that we have this partnership. We've been doing this thing where we've been bringing spatial together with BI. And so it's been getting noticed. Gartner in 2017 had some of these things to say about it. They've been seeing that companies are adopting spatial technologies at a rapid rate. They're recognizing that it is a competitive differentiator. It's something that if you're not utilizing spatial technology within your enterprise organization, you're going to probably be falling behind. And it's something that is important. And Gartner was recognizing that even last year. One reason that we think that it's really important to work with Microsoft in this space is because they are a leader in this space. And so if you haven't seen something like this before, how many people are familiar with Magic Quadrants? Have you seen these before? They're pretty neat little tools. Again, this was put out by Gartner. And so the way a Magic Quadrant works is they analyze an industry. And so they look at all the players within the industry, and they figure out who are the important players in the industry, who is kind of lagging behind a little bit in the industry. And so this is the Magic Quadrant for business intelligence platforms. And so if we look at this, we can see that along the bottom, we've got the completeness of vision. So as you move from left to right, these players are ranked as to how complete their vision of BI is. And so as you go from bottom to top, you'll see on that axis the ability to execute. So how capable are these organizations for actually executing that vision that they're being ranked on? And so where you want to be on this graph is in the upper right-hand corner, exactly where Microsoft is. And so this is one of the reasons why we have partnered so tightly and so closely with Microsoft, because we're the best in spatial, and they're clearly the best in BI. So just wanted to toot our horn a little bit there, but we'll move now into actually talking about what the product does. So the first thing that you can do, and the first thing that I want to talk about with Maps for Power BI, is visualizing your Power BI data on a map. And so in this screenshot, you're going to see just a basic level report that you can create when using the Power BI tool. So right now, it's mostly a blank canvas. You'll see that all the way to the right, we've got some fields. That's where your fields would show up if you had fields added from your data sources. Just a little bit to the left of that are your visualization options. And so you've got a little palette up there with charts and graphs and line graphs and bar charts, all kinds of things that you can add to your report to visualize your information. And so the ArcGIS Maps for Power BI product is included in Power BI out of the box by default. So as I mentioned, it's this partnership. We're working together. Esri builds this visual, this mapping component. We ship it off to Microsoft's Power BI team. They bundle it up into Power BI, and they release it. So it's not something that you have to know about. It's not something that you have to go get. It's just something that lives there inside Power BI. And it's right there where I have circled in red. We have a little globe icon. You hover over it and it says ArcGIS Maps for Power BI. And when you click on it, you get this little white box in the top left. It's a little map thing that's ready to be filled with data. And so you'll see some field wells, we call them field wells, kind of right below that icon. And so those field wells are specific to our visual, and they are how you interact with the visual at a broad level. And so let's drill into those field wells just a little bit. They allow you to, again, there's a better view of the globe icon. I've got it circled there on the left. You click on that, and then you get the field wells to the right that you use to interact with the map. And so you can add locations to the map a couple of different ways. So the first way is using the location field well. So you can drag whatever location fields that you have into that location field well, and we're going to try to figure out what it is, and then we're going to try to map it. So if you drag in something like an address, we will parse that, we will realize that it's an address, and we'll send you back points. If you drag in something like a zip code or a postal code, chances are we're going to recognize that, and we will send you back a boundary showing that postal code or that zip code area right there on the map. So that's kind of the first line of how do you get stuff on a map, and that's generally how these business analysts will probably be using maps for Power BI. They will drag their things into the location field well, and then it will show up on the map. If you happen to be a GIS person, which I think most of you probably are, you might also have latitude and longitude information in your data set that you've added to Power BI. And so if you do have latitude and longitude information, we do have field wells for those, and so you can drag those fields into those field wells. And if you have it, this is the option that we recommend because it draws faster, it doesn't require sending anything back to Esri for processing and locating, and we have higher limits. We can just draw more of them on the map. So if you have latitude, longitude, use those. If you don't, no problem, use the location field well. Once you have your stuff on the map, whether they be points or polygons, you can then move on to the other field wells to adjust the other properties of those. You can do symbology using the size and color field wells to add more information. So if you want to change the size of each one of those points based on sales, like DJ was showing earlier, he was showing inventory levels by size. He was using that size field well. He was also using, in conjunction with the size field well, he was using the color field well to actually use a categorical variable saying which store or which distribution center is this store related to. And so that distribution center gave each point a unique color. And so he was using both size and color to get a bivariate rendering. And so that's fancy speak that you guys know, but business analysts don't know that, but they do know that they can use size and color together to see pretty things on the map. You can also use our time field well to create time animations. So if you actually do have time data in with your Power BI data, you can drag that time field into our time field well, and it will break that up and you can play back your information through time. The final field well that I want to talk about is our tooltips field well, and so this gives you the opportunity to add more information into the pop-ups. So as you hover on locations that you have on your map, if you've only used, let's say, location and maybe size, you may only have one or two things in your pop-up, but you want to add more things. Like you might want to add a reference phone number, you might want to add some other bits of information, who's the manager of the store, what's the phone number of the store, a few, like what's the web page of the store. You can add all of those things into the tooltips field well, and they will show up on the pop-ups whenever you hover over those items. So those are field wells. Those are the main ways that you interact with your map using Maps for Power BI. For the people who are map authors and the people who want to go a little bit further, we do have another mode called edit mode. And so edit mode is going to give you more options. And so these options are things like base maps. And so if you really want to go in there and change, our default is the light gray base map, but if you want to use a different base map, you can go into this edit mode, and then it'll give you a little ribbon. You can kind of see it there. A ribbon across the top of the map. The map will go to full screen, and so you'll get the option to change your base maps. And so we give you, for the free users, the visual that they were talking about before, for all users of Power BI, they get access to 4 base maps. And so those base maps are light gray canvas, dark gray canvas, OpenStreetMaps, and our Esri Street Maps layer. And so if you want more base maps than that, we have some paid subscriptions that we'll talk about a little bit later that open up more base maps to your users. But if you want to put things out for everybody already completely for free. These are the 4 that we provide for you. So the next thing I want to talk about, going across that top ribbon bar for editing and advanced users, are location types. So as I mentioned, if you use the location field well, we will do our best to figure out what you're trying to map. Sometimes if the field name isn't intuitive or isn't understandable by our system, we may get it wrong. And so we may map it as a point when you are wanting a boundary, for example. So if, let's say you have zip codes and we didn't recognize them as zip codes and didn't give you the boundaries, this will come back as you see it right now. It'll say represent locations as points. You can flip that over and say give me boundaries, and then you can manually define what kind of area or what kind of boundary you have there. And then we will match that up to our repository of standard geographic boundaries from across the world, and we will give you back those boundaries as you have requested. So if we get the location field well thing wrong, you can tweak it right here. So, yep. I think that's about it for the location types information. Again, moving across that toolbar, we have map themes and symbol styles. So if you want to tweak the look, you can change things like color ramp, you can change things like boundary thickness, you can change things like transparency. You can also apply themes to aggregate your points together. So if you just have way too many points on the map, you can't make sense of things and you want to aggregate them together, we do provide options like clustering, which is there on the top left. We also provide options like heat maps, which is there on the top right. So you can apply those, and then from then on, once you kind of go back into view mode, those will be how your locations are represented on the map. So enough talking about this stuff for a minute. Let's go in and actually take a look at what this looks like. So DJ, can you help us out with that?
I sure can.
Is it 3?
Yes, it is 3.
There you go.
Comes before 4. And all right, so let's say you wanted to add a map to your report. So you remember Scott mentioning you have this visualizations palette, and we are right here. That last one right there, it's built-in default with a little green globe. You can click on that, and it adds a blank visual. So you want to actually visualize features on there. And like Scott was saying, you can geocode addresses, you can add standard administrative boundaries. In this case, my data is using latitude and longitude. So I'm going to grab my latitude and longitude fields, drag those into the latitude and longitude field wells, and that instantly causes the map to instantiate, plots the points, and just like that, your data is represented on the map. Now, this is nice, but we actually want to see some data, some information about my features. So I can, as Scott was saying, I can take the data that I want to use and drag it into the size and color field well. So in this case, I'm very interested in the this facility, the distributions. Thank you, the distribution center that's serving each of these. So I'm going to represent that with color. And I'm also interested in the amount of inventory each location has. So I'm going to represent that with size. And just like that, it's going to style my map. So colors show me which distribution center is serving each location. I can get a quick idea of what the inventory levels are across all the stores. Now, I want to make this I want to do some more advanced editing here. To do that, I come up to this overflow menu, the 3 dots, and I click on this. And right there, I can click on Edit, and now I get access to Edit View, where you get all the more advanced styling options and editing options. I can come over here to Base Map. I can customize my base map. Because I'm signed in as an ArcGIS named user, I have access to my organization's base map. So in this case, I've got all kinds of fancy projections because I can. And if you come over, you can choose from any of these, or you can also choose from any of the Esri included base maps. So classics like dark gray canvas, and of course you've got imagery and the like. In this case, I really want my base map to just stay in the background and really let my data do the talking. So I'm going to choose dark gray canvas. I can also do some more advanced styling options. It's relatively simple compared to some of the more advanced GIS tools you use, but it is great for helping you tell the story you need to tell in Power BI. So you've got standards such as transparency or symbol type. I can change my classification, so if I want to show numeric using equal intervals instead of natural breaks, I can. In this case, I'm more interested in the colors for my categories because I want it to match whatever custom colors I chose for my bar chart. So I can come in here and I can choose a custom color. So if I really want gold, or if I really want my favorite green, I can do that. Or I can even specify a custom color. So it's some very simple but important and powerful tools. And so just like that, I've been able to add my data to the map, been able to customize the styling, as well as choose a base map to show my data. So there you go, Scott.
Awesome. Looks good. All right, so we've got our locations on the map. What can we do next? Next thing we want to talk about, using ArcGIS reference layers to add some context to that Power BI data. So you've got your locations coming from Power BI, let's say customer locations maybe. That's all you've got at this point. You've got customer locations and you don't know not a lot else about where that customer may live. Do they live in a populated area? Do they live in a low population area, etc. So how could we find that out? We can use ArcGIS reference layers. So going back into our edit mode, we can go to reference layers. And so those reference layers really, we've kind of changed the terminology a little bit for this business intelligence audience. They might not know what a hosted feature service is or et cetera, so we needed to call it something else. So we call them reference layers. So reference layers are things that you can put on your map behind your Power BI data, and you can see something like a choropleth map like you're seeing there in the middle. And so again, out of the box for free, we provide a number of demographic reference layers for every user of Power BI. We include things like household income, we include things like population, median home value, population density, measures that we think are important to help you understand your locations a little bit better. So again, for free, you can just add these right in to get a little bit more context about the locations that you're interested in. As you click on these things, you can see you get a rich pop-up with a lot more information about the specific variable that you're looking at there. In this case, it is disposable income per household. So in addition to those 10 free US-based demographic layers that we provide in the box, we also allow you to use any ArcGIS reference layer that is publicly posted out to ArcGIS Online. So this is a way to, again, this is available for free users. Anybody can go out and access any publicly available ArcGIS Online feature layer. So if you have things that you want to use in your reports and you want to use in this free version of the visual, you can go out to ArcGIS Online, publish your feature layer, share it with everyone, and then come back over here into Power BI and pick it up and use it in your Power BI reports and dashboards. So that's a pretty cool piece of functionality once you start merging Esri and Microsoft technologies like that. So DJ, why don't you show us that cool merging of Esri and Microsoft technology?
Absolutely. So as Scott was saying, I mean, one of the really cool things about this is you aren't tied to just the data you bring into Power BI. You can also access data from ArcGIS Online as well as Esri authoritative data. So here we've got my maps. I've gotten a little further along putting them together, and now I want to bring in some data from ArcGIS Online. So what I can do is I can come over here to that overflow menu as we were talking about earlier, go into edit mode, and then I can access here the reference layer button that Scott mentioned. I can click on that, and now you'll see here a series of demographic layers. So I can add some USA demographic layers. Because I'm signed in as a named user, I also get access to the Living Atlas. And this includes all these authoritative boundary layers, a lot of demographic data, and other really important information that can help you make better and more informed decisions. I'm really interested, though, in adding some content from ArcGIS Online. So here you see this is some analysis we did on allocation, but I really want those custom boundary layer you saw earlier. So I can click Add. and it'll very quickly add that to the map. And now I can see what the boundaries are for each distribution center in this case, or I can view other boundary layers as well. And now I can make spatial selections, I can filter my data on that, or I can even just click on it, view information about that area from my hosted feature service. But another thing here is, because I want a little more data, I still want some of that demographic data you saw. I don't know if you saw earlier, but we had a little card here in the top right. That was an infographics card. And they're very useful for giving me data about what I see on the map right now. So in this case, I really wanted some information on total US population. Now I could add some more advanced options as well. Since I'm signed in as a ArcGIS named user, I get access to demographic data from all over the world, which is really, really cool. But in this case, I just want something very simple. Just tell me a little bit more about what the amount of people living in the area that I'm viewing. And so this card is pulling authoritative Esri data, and it's giving me data about what's in the current extent of my map. So when I pan and zoom, it updates to tell me about what I'm looking at. And I can also come in here and I can make a selection, and it'll very quickly tell me information about the demographics around those features. And I can even customize that, so I can have that be a drive time if I want, or maybe a 10-mile radius instead of the 1-mile radius. So it's a very, very powerful and easy way to get a little more demographic data onto the map and into my report. And so, just like that, I've been able to bring in some data from ArcGIS Online that was created by either another GIS person or by myself. I was also able to bring in some demographic data that's going to provide some more context and help me make better and more informed decisions. So there you go.
Cool. Thanks, DJ. Okay, so moving right along. The next thing we want to talk about is finding nearby locations using drive time areas. And so this is a tool that's been pretty popular when we've shown it at the Microsoft conferences. People come up to us afterwards talking about how neat of an idea it is. And so it might not wow you guys quite as much since you're a GIS crowd and this is pretty routine for you, but for the business intelligence users out there, if you're going back to your organization to show them things, this might be something to kind of show them and highlight to them what this thing can do. And so we typically talk about this drive time tool in conjunction with our pins tool. So if you want to put some locations on the map that don't exist in your Power BI data set, that's when you would use our pins tool. So again, it's in your edit mode. You go across that top ribbon, click on pins, and then you get a little search interface, and you can just start searching for things. So you can type things like Pizza Hut, or you can type things like Space Needle, or you can type in an address. Wherever your stores or locations that you want to put on the map, wherever they might be, you type it in, and you can add those pins to your map. And then what I like to do, let's say we're putting stores or franchises on a map, we could put up to, I think, 10. We can put 10 pins on the map. And then we can use those as seed locations for these drive time areas. So what I've done, I've had my store location on the map, and the analysis that I want to do is say, I want to know all of my customers within, let's say, a 15-minute drive time of that store location. So I've created my pen, put it on the map, I've used it as a seed to create a drive time of 15 minutes, and that's what's being shown in purple. And so that purple thing that is a drive time area can be used, once we get it on the map, it can be used as a selection tool. It can be used as a cookie cutter to select our customers that are within that area. And then that selection is fully interactive with the rest of Power BI. So your other visuals on your report then update based on that selection. So that's a pretty powerful little piece of spatial analysis that we're exposing through this Maps for Power BI tool. And so now I'm going to kick it back to DJ, and he's going to show us that tool.
Very cool. Thank you, Scott. So let's say you're looking at your map, and you're panning around, getting an idea of, okay, what are the inventory levels of my stores? And you notice, one or two that are starting to look a little like they might be running low on inventory. Now, one option here is you can have inventory transferred from a nearby store to this one that's running low on inventory. And as somebody who used to work in retail, I mean, this happens every so often. So in this case, I really want to find some stores that are within a reasonable amount of driving time to this one that they can, it can refill it a little bit. So what I can do is I can go into that edit mode we've been discussing. I can select the drive time tool, and that'll open up the drive time widget. And since I've already got it selected, it's already brought up the tools, and now I can choose, I can choose a radius, I can specify, maybe 10 miles or 15 miles, or in this case, drive time is really more appropriate. And I think about, 30 minutes would be, the maximum amount of time I'd want somebody to drive to refill this, the inventory for this store. So I can say, type that in, hit OK. It'll, within a few seconds, we're going to get that back. It'll draw a drive time area on the map that I can now visualize, and I can see, okay, I can style it if I want to. But now I can see, like, oh, look, I've got these stores here that are all sort of within 30 minutes. But what's really neat is that now I can also use this drive time selection tool to select the features that lie within it, and it updates and gives me some information in the rest of the dashboard regarding those features that are within 30 minutes. So it's very easy for me to quickly get an idea of some of the best candidates for helping out this store that's running low on inventory. So there we go. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, DJ. So the next thing to talk about, those are the major features of Maps for Power BI. It's a pretty simple, intuitive tool. The next thing we want to talk about is licensing. And so we've been talking about, okay, sometimes you get some paid capabilities and you get more stuff. There's a free version that came out first. What's what? What do I get at which level? And so to answer that question, we created this little chart. It's out on our website. So if you go to esri.com/powerbi, you can refer to this later and find out exactly the details here. But generally, the idea is there on the left, that is the free version of the visual that everybody that uses Power BI has access to. And so they get things, like I mentioned earlier, they get those US demographic reference layers. They get infographics for the US. I think they get 40 or 50 of those. They get the ability to map and view their locations using the location field well. And so whenever they're using that location field well, they are actually using our world geocoding service. So that's being sent to Esri. We're geocoding it. We're sending it back. And again, this is all for free, not using credits at this level. Actually, we don't use credits at all within this app. So we had a couple people ask about that at our last session. Yep. Credits are not involved with ArcGIS Maps for Power BI, so you don't have to think about that at all.
I also hear it at the booth a lot.
Yeah. Yep. So it's something that comes up a lot. People have credit fear sometimes, so don't have credit fear here with Maps for Power BI. You don't have to worry about it. Again, you can do that spatial analysis such as heat maps, drive times, clustering, all of that is included with free. And again, those 4 base maps are included in the free version. As we move from left to right, we start increasing in capabilities. And so I do want to pause a little bit and talk about the difference between the Plus subscription and the ArcGIS Online subscription and how we view it internally at Esri. We really created these for 2 different audiences. The Plus subscription is for a Power BI user who might not have any relationship with Esri, might not know much about Esri. They've been using the free visual, but they needed to do a little bit more. And so that is what the Plus subscription was designed for. It was to help that person that doesn't have an Esri account, doesn't have an ArcGIS named user license, doesn't even know what that thing is, to help them get a little bit more out of Maps for Power BI. And so the ArcGIS Online option is for the Esri customer. And so it includes everything to the left of it and a little bit more. So let's get into the details of that just a little bit. So the Plus subscription, again, there in the middle, aimed at people who aren't necessarily Esri customers, it gives you access to more demographic information. So those infographics cards that you saw, for the free user, those are US only. And for the Plus user, those are available globally. And so we have thousands of variables globally that you can add to your map and get information as you pan and zoom around. We also have the ready-to-use data curated from authoritative sources, also known as the Living Atlas. So once you're a Plus subscriber, you get the Living Atlas. It's a little bit of a curated version of the Living Atlas. It's not the full Living Atlas, but it is a curated view of the Living Atlas. You can also map and view more locations. So as I mentioned, when you use that location field well, that is sending locations to Esri for geoprocessing. And so we are giving a set amount of those for free, and we're giving a lot more of those for paid plus subscribers. And so you get more capability to map your locations in the location field well. You get all of the same spatial analysis that's included with the free version, and you get access to more base maps. And so you get access to the standard 12 Esri base maps, so things like imagery, things like topographic, things like oceans, the standard ones that you're familiar with in ArcGIS Online. A plus subscription opens those up to you to be able to use them in your ArcGIS Maps for Power BI maps. And finally, the ArcGIS Online column there to the right. Again, that includes everything to the left. So everything in a plus subscription is included with your ArcGIS Online capabilities. Everything in the free version is included in your ArcGIS Online capabilities. But you also get the ability to sign in and gain access to content that you've created on your ArcGIS Online organization, but haven't shared publicly. Let's say you want to keep things securely, only visible to people within your organization. This gives you the ability to use that kind of content on your maps inside Power BI. So that was a result of people saying, like, when we released the free version and we gave you the ability to view public content on ArcGIS Online, they said, yeah, that's great, but I need to be able to only put my boundary territories that only my organization is allowed to see. I need to include those on the map. How do I do that? And so until recently, you couldn't. But now you can, because we've released this option that allows you to sign in with your ArcGIS named user credential. And so that can be a level 1 credential or a level 2 named user credential. And that will get you access to all of your content, all of your feature layers within your ArcGIS Online organization. And so that's kind of how it breaks down. That's a general overview of what you get at what different level. Yeah, I think it's now time to move on to the road ahead. Licensing gets boring.
Really? I love licensing.
It's important, but it is dry. So let's talk a little bit about the road ahead. So there on the left, I'm not going to focus too hard on that, but these are the things that we've completed since the last UC. We've added the plus licensing levels. We've added options for individual licensing and bulk licensing, like Sanjeev mentioned earlier. We've allowed you to let's see, what else? We've improved our boundary generalization. So if you were an early user of Maps for Power BI and you tried to bring in boundaries, they would be generalized in a way that could really be classified as abstract art sometimes. And so that's been highly improved. We do much smarter generalization now, so you can get right down in there and see boundaries highly detailed if you're close, and if you zoom way out, it still remains performant because we're doing generalization in a smart way. We've also increased memory performance, so a decreased memory footprint when you're running our map visual, so it doesn't bog down slower machines. And our boundary lookups, we've just been iterating all the time, because as people are using this, they're giving us feedback on what's working and what's not working, and we just kind of iterate. Power BI is something that releases, their desktop version releases every month. I think their service releases every week. And so they have fast iteration cycles. So as soon as we come up with something, we can plug it into one of their work streams and get it out there to you guys as fast as we can.
Yep.
So coming up, kind of future roadmap for the product, we have some vastly improved map performance coming up. So I think I'm just going to let DJ show it here in just a second, because words don't do it justice. It's really incredible how much better the underlying map technology is going to be fairly soon. Another thing that we're working on is support for embedded scenarios. That's one of the top asks that we hear and that I've been hearing this week, is people say, I use Power BI, I use publish to web, I put things out there on the web, I embed things into other applications like SharePoint. Can you guys do that? And right now the answer is no. We don't support publish to web or embedded scenarios, but we're going to be providing that at some point in the future. It's something that we're working back and forth with Microsoft on to figure out exactly how this is going to work. But we hope to knock it out relatively soon. The other thing is the Find Similar tool. So we're going to be providing an option to, let's say you select a point on the map and you say, I want to find other customers like this key customer that I have. I want to find other customers that have the same several different variables that you want to find similar to that star customer that you've got. Show me the other ones that are like that on the map, and so you can run this Find Similar tool, and it will call out those other key customers or people like that key customer that you selected on the map. So those are things that are coming up for the Maps for Power BI tool. And now I'm going to turn it back over to DJ to kind of show a demo of that improved performance. It's really quite incredible.
I'm just smiling here. Yeah, because every time I get to play with this technology, I just kind of start smiling like it's Christmas morning and I'm 6 years old. It's pretty incredible. So we've been working very closely with the Insights for ArcGIS team to improve our performance. And not only is it going to be faster, but it's going to be a lot faster, and you're going to be able to put a lot more points on the map. So here on the left, this is production, 10,000 points maximum lat long. On the right, you have the new stuff that's coming up, that's 30,000 lat long points. I can pan and zoom, and as you can see, it's a little herky, a little jerky. I have to try several times. When I come over here, though, it's quick, it's fast, there's almost no delay. I don't have any worries about it suddenly locking up on me. Filtering the map is much, much faster. As you can see right there, I was able to blow through all of that filtering in no time at all with the new technology. And it's a lot more stable. It's going to be able to work a lot better in your workflows. It should be a lot easier to use. And like I said, you're going to be able to add a lot more data to the map. So there you go.
Cool. Thanks, DJ. All right, so that kind of wraps up our session for today. I do want to add a few more things. If you want to come play with Maps for Power BI, we do have it on the Apps Island. If you walk into the hall, the expo hall, you can find the Apps Island to the back and to the right. And so we do have a machine set up with Maps for Power BI,
we have
BI
a couple.
on it. Couple set up so that you can go play with it, go talk to DJ, go
You'll
ask
have
him.
to put up with me for a little while.
Go ask him all your questions. So that's where we are. If you need some more information, we have some things out online that you may find interesting. We have our GeoNet community where you can come ask the team questions. We have really great documentation out there. And we also have some training seminars. We just did a webinar with Microsoft within the last couple weeks. You can search that out. And in case you want to take this information back to other people within your organization and share it with them, I would suggest either going to this intro training seminar or searching out that webinar that we just did and sending them a link to that so they can get this same kind of information. So those are our additional resources for you. At this point, I would like to, well, before we go to Q&A, I do want to mention we do have, we would appreciate it if you filled out the survey. If you have the Esri events app, just go into this session. You can fill out a survey, tell us how we did. We do see every one of those, so please fill them out and be kind. But at this point, we will open it up to Q&A in case you have questions about this ArcGIS Maps for Power BI product or Power BI in general. Sanjeev might be able to help us out with that. Okay, I see a question right here.
A lot of reference to ArcGIS online. I don't know if you assume that this doesn't work in Quorum.
Okay, so that's a great question. A lot of reference to ArcGIS Online. Are we to assume that this doesn't work in ArcGIS Enterprise or Portal? That's correct. This works only with ArcGIS Online.
Okay.
Yes. Over here to the left.
I'm sorry, I have a boring question about licensing. Is Power BI free from Microsoft, or do they have to pay something to Microsoft?
Okay, so the question is Power BI free from Microsoft, or do you have to pay something for Microsoft? So I'm going to answer this in two parts. First, directly to answer your question, yes, you can download Power BI Desktop for free from Microsoft. You just go to powerbi.com, it'll take you there, it'll say download it for free. So you can get it, start using it, and everything that you've seen in the included free version today, completely for free. The second part of that is the licensing that we've talked about for Maps for Power BI. is completely decoupled from any licensing from Power BI, because there are paid versions of Power BI and there are things that you can pay for to get more capabilities in Power BI, but those licensing options do not couple at all with the Maps for Power BI licensing options. You can mix and match however you want. Yeah. Okay, in the back.
Right now, there's 3 similar products. There's Insights, the Operations Dashboard, and Power BI and Esri. When would you recommend each scenarios, each better suited for?
Yep, so that's a good question. So the question was, so there are 3 products that seem somewhat similar. There's Maps for Power BI, there's Operations Dashboard, and there's Insights for ArcGIS. When would you recommend using which product, right? And so Ops Dashboard and Insights are really pieces of the ArcGIS platform. They're really geared towards ArcGIS customers and Esri customers. So if you have, let's say for Insights, for example, if you have advanced spatial analysis needs, or if you need to do exploratory spatial analysis beyond the capabilities of what you can do in other options, Insights is a good option for you. Ops Dashboard is if you have, a lot of feature layers living out there, you have a lot of your GIS information in ArcGIS, you have people out in the field doing things like hurricane recovery efforts or anything else where you might be using like the Collector app to in real time update those feature layers. You might want to focus on Ops Dashboard because you have all of your information kind of living in ArcGIS anyways. That's when you would want to think about using Ops Dashboard.
It also offers a good alerting system, I think, as well.
Yeah, it offers some different capabilities, and it's really catered towards people who have kind of gone all in on ArcGIS and have all their stuff there anyways. Power BI, and especially ArcGIS Maps for Power BI, is really intended for people who are Power BI first. So if your organization has Power BI across the entire organization, and your organization has said, Power BI is our tool, right? Or if you just like Power BI better, if that's your preferred environment, we provide these options for you, right? So ArcGIS Maps for Power BI is for you if you kind of fall within that latter category. Yep. So, you're on the aisle.
So can users only interact with something that you've created if they have Power BI? It's not like an outside viewer?
Good question. So the question was, can users only interact with something you've created if they have Power BI? Is there not like an outside viewer? So that kind of gets into that when I was talking about publish to web and embedded. In Power BI, you can actually publish one of your reports to the web, and then people could interact with it directly from a browser, right? And so Power BI does contain that capability, but at this time, Maps for Power BI doesn't support publish to web or embedded scenarios, so you do need Power BI to use Maps for Power BI at this time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is there like just a viewer option? Like if I did all these creating different dashboards or widgets or whatever, but I don't want the person that is intended to use it to edit or change anything, is there like a read-only version I can send to them?
I believe so.
Yes, you can. Again, you mentioned, right? I mean, if you're embedding it in any form, then the ArcGIS portion will not work. But I believe there is a read-only version for Power BI. Yes.
Yeah, so there is a service option, like it's called Power BI Service, so it's basically Power BI in the cloud. And so they wouldn't need Power BI Desktop, anything installed. Dang, this.
So Power BI
It's
works
killing
as a SaaS offering also. It's a software as a service. So it's completely hosted, in which case you can create a report and just send people a link saying, just click this thing.
Yeah, and so we do work in Power BI Service.
Yes, yes. But again, embedding will not work, so
Yeah.
with the ArcGIS.
Yep. Here on the aisle.
Are you planning to support any advanced data types in the location field, like GeoJSON, for example, in the future?
Yeah, okay, so the question was, are you planning on supporting any advanced data types like GeoJSON in the location field in the future? At this point, we don't have any plans for that, but you never know. Like with enough like customer demand, it might be something that we could offer in the future.
I mean, points are great, but I'd like to see how code deployments, for example.
That's right. I mean, okay, so that is probably like the number one or number two thing that we hear is actually being able to use your custom boundaries and custom locations. Because right now, when you map boundaries, they have to be our standard geographic boundaries. And what you mentioned and what you're getting at is I would like to be able to use my own custom boundaries and symbolize that using Power BI data, right? And so that's something that we hear a lot, and that's something that's on our backlog, and it's something we're evaluating how to do it. Yeah.
Is that polygons and polygons? Can you import custom polygons and polylines into Power BI?
Okay, so the question was, can you import custom polygons and polylines into Power BI?
Yeah, from ArcMap.
From ArcMap. So from ArcMap, no. From ArcGIS Online, you can bring them in as reference layers. So you can just pull them in to essentially visualize or use as selection areas, like that little cookie cutter that made selections. You can't use them to symbolize based on your Power BI data at this time. Okay, over here.
So you have a Power BI subscription, right? So you have a desktop and you want a subscription. Then you create a dashboard. Then you also create maps in Power BI, which obviously were driven by Esri product. Are we able to publish that dashboard on the web with the maps in it?
So the question was, am I able to publish my reports to the web with the maps in them? And at this time, no, we don't support publish to web or embedded.
So the only thing we'd be able to publish are the reports. Obviously, we did some bar graphs and all kinds of other stuff. So the maps wouldn't be able to be published at this time.
At this time, that's right. Don't know. Don't have an answer. It's a technical issue that we're working out between us and Microsoft. We have to do a little bit, they have to do a little bit, and we're trying to figure it out. Yep.
I know another question you probably can't answer. When you do add that capability, is it going to be with free versions or probably with paid versions?
Okay, so the question was, if and when we do support that, would it be for the free versions or for the paid versions? Again, it's not something we can really answer. It will be easier to support the free version in that scenario, of course, but we don't have set plans on that right now, on exactly how that will work. Yeah.
So you mentioned it's not published to the web, but is that able to create a dashboard, probably a dashboard that is shared in the group with the subscription?
When you say share within the group, can you expand?
Because of Power BI, you can create a report on dashboard. And with the dashboard, you can share with specific subscription group in your own organization.
Yeah, and so the question was, if you share it within, if you create a report or a dashboard, put a map on it, share it within your organization using Power BI service, yep, can they see it? And the answer is yes. Like we do work on Power BI service.
And can they integrate interaction like the report?
Can they interact with the map?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Another one.
Sure.
You show the capability of the living, the stream, the layer, the live layer.
Living atlas. Living atlas, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
If you create a map with that one is totally free. Like if you can find a weather areas that living, living stream map layer, you can use that one and just to show in the Power BI.
So the question was about our Living Atlas option.
Yeah.
And can you use that? Is that for free? How do I use it? So Living Atlas is not included with the free version of the visual. So you have to be at least a Plus subscriber or higher to get the Living Atlas.
If I log in with the level 1 enterprise account and create a map, and then it should be working.
Yep. So the follow was, if I'm a level 1 user, I sign in, a level 1 named user on the ArcGIS platform, I sign in, I add a Living Atlas layer to the map, will it work? And so yes, at that point it will work, and it will also require anybody viewing that map to also be at least at that level.
Gotcha. Will everybody, the people viewing, we can use the credit to consume? Because those people audience is not necessary for the ad.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, there's no credits here. Don't have to worry about credits here. Yep, over here to the right.
Can you use the web map? Can you embed the web map?
Yep. So that's, the question was, can you embed a web map inside the ArcGIS Maps for Power BI map? And at this time, no. We support one reference layer, which reference layer equals feature layer. So you can bring in one feature layer into your map at a time. So if you want to view multiple, we suggest using maybe like mini maps, using multiple mini maps to get multiple layers in your report or dashboard. But yeah, at this time, you can add one reference layer and you can have one operational layer coming from Power BI.
Sorry, the operational layer is in terms of the ArcGIS Online is will be the reference layer for the Power BI. Is the same layer, right?
No, when I say operational layer, I'm referring to the layer that you're bringing from Power BI. So the thing that you pulled into the location field well or the latitude longitude, that's actually your Power BI and what I'm calling your operational layer from Power BI. And so then behind that, you can put one reference layer, which is essentially one feature layer behind it.
Is that you mentioned the latitude longitude? So for example, our data are actually living ArcGIS Online. So can we get that longitude from ArcGIS Online embedded into the Power BI?
No, there's no embedding something from ArcGIS into Power BI. Like, we only consume things and read things. We don't put anything into the Power BI data model.
So is that latitude longitude field that we get? So the point we have in ArcGIS Online that is displayed to the Power BI map. You see there are differences there.
I mean, I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but if you have latitude, longitude in your pop-ups in a layer on ArcGIS Online, and you bring in that layer in the Maps for Power BI thing, and you click on the pop-up, you would see the latitude, longitude. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so for example, we have the lots of points in our data.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to display that data to our Power BI dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a polygon layer, custom polygon layer. I want to see that they click on the custom polygon layer and then want to display only those points inside the boundary. So that part is of what that we do. Like I have to add that difference there and operational layer as a point.
That's right. Okay. I think we're a little bit over. We'll do one more question and then get out of here.
Real fast, are you restricted to one operational layer and one reference layer? Is that it?
Yeah, so the question is, are you restricted to one operational layer and one reference layer? The answer is yes.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to call it a wrap. If you have other questions, come on up and talk to us. Thanks a lot.